Orange is the New Black is over, and it has been for several weeks now, but we are just getting started here at Post-Show Recaps. My name is Jessica Liese, and with me as always is Taylor Cotter. How are you this evening, Taylor?
I'm great, Jess. How are you?
I'm very good. We had some internet trouble last time, so we only ended up covering 2 episodes, so we're going to do a special supersized episode of Post-Show Recaps this evening, as we are going to try to dig through episodes 7 through 10, which you're getting into the home stretch here. And
Yeah, we'll only have one more episode after this.
yeah, that's kind of bittersweet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. But I'm ready to be done, I think. Everyone I know has been done for weeks, and I am excited to talk about the season kind of as a whole rather than just episode by episode.
Yeah, I've had people wanting to talk about the show to me, and I have to stop them because I know
hmm
they've seen the whole thing.
Yep, and something I know is not to get too far off track, but we've even seen this in our comments a little bit, that we'll be confused about something that is then revealed immediately in the next episode.
That's happened
And
a few times now.
right, in the last episode, I was very confused about the kind of senile woman. I was like, I don't know her name. I don't think they said her name. And then I start the very next episode, and it's like, oh, her name is like Jimmy Cartwright or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like the first thing they say. And someone said it in the comments. I was like, how did I miss like such an important thing? It's like, I don't know if I missed it, but it was very clear as soon as we started the next episode. So
Yeah, or me not being sure where Gloria was from, and then the very next episode she says she's from Puerto Rico.
right. So forgive our ignorance for things that do get revealed, but maybe not in the 180 minutes that we're watching any given week.
Yeah, and I've got something even worse now on the burner as far as like trying not to be spoiled. And it turns out that my friend T is now working as an extra on the set as they are filming season 3. I found this out tonight, and she's not allowed to tell me anything, but I'm so intrigued, and
Oh,
I
that's great.
I can't wait for next season to be able to kind of look for her in every scene. It'll be
Oh,
familiar.
awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So should we jump right back into episode 7?
Yes, we will jump right into episode 7. This is the Black Cindy episode.
Yes. And so we kind of started talking a little bit about this since we were kind of talking about the last 3 episodes in conjunction with one another. But we get Black Cindy's backstory, which, even though it was something that I wasn't sitting around waiting for, it was very interesting and kind of funny. So we learned a lot about who this character, Black Cindy, is, more so in this one episode than we had in the entire series up to this point.
Yeah, well, she's only really appeared in about 4 episodes up to this point.
Right.
They kind of brought her in when Tasty got out. She was kind of the substitute Tasty, and then she stuck around, and I'm okay with it. She's all right, but I have to say she was not on the short list of people I wanted to hear from. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Exactly. There's so many characters on this show. Like, I don't know how we're ever going to find out everything about all of them. And I want to. That's the problem. I want to.
We've got like 10 seasons worth of material here.
Right. So we find out that Cindy, Cindy Watson, Black Cindy, was a TSA agent. So she was kind of a corrupt TSA agent, and she would feel people up, which I thought was a bit funny. And then she would, if she saw that people had expensive stuff in their luggage, would creep through their luggage and steal their stuff, which is horrible and terrifying.
Yeah, but not wholly unexpected if you've done any amount of flying in the last decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it felt really like 80s movie montage. She was cruising through on the sky cab, like stealing water bottles and having a great time. All it needed was like some peppy synthesizer music in the background.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is the TSA agent is a fairly decent job, so they don't let anyone do that. So I thought she did well by herself to come across this kind of federal job.
Yeah, and it seems like everybody back home was very impressed by this.
Yes. Yeah, so she goes back to her house in a couple of different segments, and we meet her little sister, who it's kind of unclear. Cindy is probably in like her mid-20s at this point, late 20s, and her little sister is probably nine. I think it was her ninth birthday. And Cindy gives her this iPad that she stole. And
That
we
she
kind of,
didn't even delete the stuff off of
right,
before
oh,
she gave it. Oh, Cindy.
such a rookie move, Cindy.
She's hardly a criminal mastermind.
Right. And we kind of see how she has a very tumultuous relationship with her mom.
Yeah. And she seems like she's very, like, unusually close to her much younger sister.
Right.
It turns out, like, the big twist is that her little sister is not actually her little sister. Her little sister is in, like, a Jack Nicholson kind of scenario where she's being raised by her grandmother and her sister is her mother. And who
Right.
didn't see that coming?
Right, yeah. That's kind of a trope. It happens all the time. I didn't really think that much about it, so because I guess I didn't really realize what had happened, but she was not Cindy is not responsible, and I think that's kind of the theme of her whole flashback is that she is not responsible at her job. She takes her sister to like a weed smoking party. I think that's what the kids call it, and how they bring her home. She smells like weed, and the mom is very upset. And Sydney ultimately, does she take off with the daughter at the end of the episode?
No, she decides not to because
Right.
she has the conversation with the guy in line, and he says, "Do you have kids?" And she's like, "No, I don't have kids."
Right.
The funny thing about this flashback is I feel like this is the first one we have seen that actually makes the character less sympathetic. Like
I would
almost
say,
everybody up to this point, we get their backstory. It's richer and more nuanced, and this one, it's just like she's irresponsible and she's kind of a terrible person.
right. I would say Lorna Morello, hers was different. It made you understand the character a lot more. If I don't think people necessarily, or I didn't necessarily feel sympathy for her after that, but it definitely gave you a much deeper insight into who this person was. This one was just kind of, it was a bit two-dimensional for a flashback.
Yeah. It wasn't. There weren't layers, and some people, I guess it's true. Some people don't have layers.
Right.
Like maybe Cindy is just Cindy.
Yeah, I think that's it. And the other thing, I don't really know how this was meant to parallel back to the episode, but the prison has gone into kind of a full-on new economic system where the black girls are making cigarettes and selling them to all the other inmates.
Yeah, and I feel like they kind of tried to shoehorn like, and this is the sort of lost storytelling pattern of you have a flashback character and then you follow this character through an anecdotal event in the present, and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of Cindy gets in a little bit of a conflict with V because Cindy is irresponsible. We see she's irresponsible in the present, and she's not running the business, like she's not running her end of the business the way that she should be. And
Exactly.
she has to answer for it.
Right, so she's not keeping good inventory and keeping her costs down, everything like that. So yeah, and this was definitely less of a part of the story in the main part of the episode, the present part of the episode, than some of the other ones we've seen, but it kind of spirals into everything else that's happening around her.
Yeah, it is sort of. And there's also some interesting parallels with you seeing that the guards are starting to crack down a little bit more, and Caputo is instituting quotas, and they're throwing out. They have to give out 5 shots a day, or is it 5 shots a week?
It's a lot
more shots than they usually give out, and they are starting to have to, throw their authority around a little bit more.
Yeah, so at the end of the last episode, we found this woman, Jimmy, who's very old and very unaware of where she is. She had escaped from prison and coincidentally ended up at the bar where Caputo and all the other guards were. So obviously, kind of skip over this part in the narrative, but Caputo brings her back and she's okay, and like they, but they report it up, and Figueroa and the other, do they tell Figueroa? They must.
Yeah.
And yes, because she starts to
flips
crack
out.
down.
Yeah.
Yep, and she's saying, you need to fire people, you need to step up to Caputo. So he implements the shot quota, which kind of sends all the guards into tailspin, especially Fisher.
Yeah. Fisher's having a rough time of it. Because it's just, I don't think it's really in her nature. She's not really an authoritarian.
Right. Fisher's someone I would, and by the end of this episode, Fisher ultimately gets fired, and that's this episode, right? Or did I skip ahead?
Yeah, she gets fired in the next episode.
Oh, the next episode. Yeah. Spoiler alert. And she, we kind of see how weak she really is. That like she cannot handle this. And I want to know kind of how she ended up in this position in the first place. Like, you don't see many young early 20s girls that end up as correctional officers.
Yeah, it seems very out of character considering the kind of person that we know her to be.
Right.
So we can keep going with the Jimmy arc, I think.
Yeah.
Probably the most heartbreaking thing we've seen on the series so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think, so they realize the prison system can't take care of her, and with someone like Miss Rosa, who's just sick, they have, a budget that they can put into her treatment and take care of her. But with someone like this who is very sick, but treatment isn't necessarily going to help, they kind of don't have any way to give this woman the care that she needs. So they do what they call like a mercy,
compassionate release,
and just drop her off at a bus station. And it's truly, truly, truly heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's really, sometimes I think the prison scenario, they portray it as a lot lighter than it probably actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of come at you and like hit you like a truck with something so horrible like this.
Right. And this is definitely a theme in this season so far, as showing how, and we get more into this going forward, how horrible this prison system is and how it doesn't do anything right by the people that are in it, especially people that are old or sick and need care, and that these people, they might be criminals and they might have done illegal things in their past, but they still, have some right to be treated like humans and be taken care of, and how poorly this system takes care of them.
Yeah. And even, like, there's a baseline standard of how prisons should be, and this one's far below it, as we're finding out. The journalist guy says to Piper, there's $2 million missing. And he has to sort of get on that.
Yep, so Piper does kind of, even, she gives this guy a lot of no, she tells him, like, I'm not gonna sneak through files or anything like that, but Piper is willing to talk to people, and she has started her newspaper, which is given like a kind of a cute little thing that goes on in the background of this episode in a couple, where she's rallied a few troops together to put together a newspaper. So she's got Daya doing cartoons, and she's got Morello doing beauty tips and just kind of nice things that they feel like they're contributing.
Yeah, it's a thing that I've discovered. Every week we've had some kind of thing we found on the internet, and I found a great one this week. On the Washington City Paper website, there's a columnist who has a friend who spent a lot of time in prison, and he's watching the show with her and asking her questions about would this really happen, and her commentary is hilarious.
Oh, awesome. I definitely have to check that out. That sounds perfect.
I will post the link to it, because they've gone through, actually I think they stopped at episode 7.
Okay.
She has these running, like, she's given nicknames to a lot of the inmates, like she calls Red Star Trek, and she calls Nikki American Pie.
Oh.
And she points out there are about 10% of the guards there actually would be in prison. And there's
Yeah.
kind of running thing. There's only 3 guards in the whole place. She said they would never let them have their own newspaper. And it might be the most ridiculous thing that has come up so far.
That's
But
pretty funny.
I think it's very high school.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. You can see this as an arc on Saved by the Bell that all the kids get together, produce a newspaper, and then it's never spoken of again.
Yeah. I think the guys on Saved by the Bell did every possible extracurricular activity once.
Yep. So I love it. Anything to make this show more like Saved by the Bell, I am all for.
All shows should be like Saved by the Bell.
Yes. So what other storylines did we have in episode 7? And I apologize to everybody. I watched this more than a week ago now, so I am a little not very fresh on episode 7.
Well, we've got this really great moment between Pusey and Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
Pusey is pretty much the only one in the entire prison, apart from Red, who really knows who's starting to suspect how awful V is.
Right.
And how much of a mistake it is to get on board with her business. And she wants no part of it, but Nikki points out to her that if Pusey puts Tasty in the middle of that conflict, it's just going to end up pushing her away. Mm-hmm. And so Pusey's got to play ball. And I thought it was a really interesting character moment between both of them, and I like Nikki's sort of cynical approach to everything.
I agree. They're kind of similar characters in their respective worlds, that they're both extremely smart, very aware of what's going on around them, and like trying to do their best while they're there, and kind of have had these relationships with people in the prison that parallel each other a little bit. So I like the fact that they're connecting. And throughout these couple episodes, I liked when people from the different worlds kind of came together. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I know we don't really like to talk about the story arcs on the outside, but this is finally going to have some repercussions, so we do have to talk about it. Larry and Polly finally consummate their relationship.
Yeah, not exciting. Yeah, and even the fallout from this, like we'll talk about later, is not thrilling to me, but exactly what we thought was going to happen. Larry and Polly sleep together. But then Polly's husband comes back.
Yeah, and like, who cares? Larry is so inconsequential. I can't even be bothered to like pretend to care.
Right. I would care about Larry if he was interacting with Piper, or had any other impact on what was going on in the prison life. But when he and Piper are like, "Oh, we're in a fight, we're not speaking," just like he doesn't need to be in every single episode.
Yeah, and he's also, like, he's proven himself to be not a very sympathetic guy, and I don't enjoy watching him. He's not evil enough to be enjoyable, like V kind of is, or Pornstash, who we'll get to.
Right.
He's just, like, a terrible person who doesn't do anything.
Yeah, poor Jason Biggs.
Poor Jason Biggs.
Oh.
So, and the last kind of big thing is Bennett is continuing to smuggle things in for the kitchen staff.
Yep.
And he ends up snapping and writing shots to everybody.
Yep.
And throwing Maritza into the shoe for no reason whatsoever.
Right. And then in the next episode, I think she's like promptly released. Like, I don't even know if that. But yeah, Bennett is definitely a complicated character, and you could kind of tell that for a while, that something was like bubbling under there, that this is a kind of a weird guy, and he has stuff going on, and he snapped. He has, he wants to be in control of that relationship with Daya, and it's looking more and more like, I don't think like attacked is the right word, but that he had much more of a role in convincing her to sleep with him than it may have originally seemed.
Yeah, and I think it's such a complicated situation, because you saw them in the last episode trying to have a normal relationship, but then he remembers the dynamic, like, hey, I'm actually in charge of these people, I can throw out repercussions, and it wears on him, I think.
Right. And I think it's very interesting. We've seen a lot of the prison staff this season, much more than last time. And I think it's the type of people that become people that work in the prison are usually interesting, and they usually have some reason to be there besides, it's very few people's calling in life to be a correctional officer. They usually have some story of how they ended up there. And that is very tangential to how these women experience their life there. So it's kind of interesting to get what's going on with them.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that wraps up episode 7.
Yeah, let's see. I think the question we have is kind of more of a general question, not necessarily an episode 7 question. So we can wait on it if you want.
Yeah, we could.
All right. Yeah, let's get through 7 and 8, and then we'll take some questions, and then we'll do 9 and 10.
That sounds good.
Okay.
All right. So episode 8. This is Rosa's episode, and she was somebody I really wanted to hear from and find out, and then I was a little disappointed by this particular.
Right. Did you know Rosa was Spanish or Hispanic?
Well, her name is Rosa.
I guess that makes sense. I thought she was Eastern European, and I was searching online, and a lot of other people also thought she was Eastern European. So I really had no idea. But yeah, we get Rosa's backstory, which is almost like a very romantic, grindhouse kind of film. Like, it was very weird.
Yeah, and it was, although it didn't reveal, like, there was not one single piece of that she hasn't already told somebody over the course of the series, and it's just kind of like, oh, we're just going to see this acted out. We know exactly how it ends up.
Right, yes. So Rosa's bank robber, we knew that. She told the kid that a couple episodes ago. And she would have these boyfriends that she robbed banks with, and then they all died. Like,
that's Rosa.
That's pretty much it. She was very, and I think, maybe the shocking part about this is that Rosa was, her story is when she was, this young, beautiful, bank robber and, very glamorous, and now she's this, obviously she's much older. She has cancer. She's very, very sick and just does not look great. And I think it was almost more of a commentary on the passing of time and how people can change, and that, she was just kind of this old lady that had a lot of stories, and we get to have a glimpse into what her life was like when she was younger.
Yeah, and how long ago do we think this was? How old could she possibly be right now?
I don't think she's very old, but I think it was probably 30 to 40 years previous.
Yeah, the first flashback looks sort of late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It had that same American Hustle aesthetic.
Right.
The subsequent ones looked like they were a couple of years later, but there's really, I think there's kind of 2 time periods that we see in the flashbacks. There's recent past and distant past, and distant past is just everybody wears these sort of vintagey big collars, and that's it.
I think, what was I going to say? I lost it. Sorry. All right, moving on.
I thought Rosa in the present was a lot more interesting.
Yeah, so Rosa is
in 1971.
Yeah, so Rosa's hanging out with this kid at the hospital, which is very sweet, and she's teaching him how to steal stuff, and she was kind of like a mentor figure to this little punk kid.
Yeah, it was it was about the only interesting thing about the flashback was the way that she kind of brought him in to the story by telling him how to set up the heist and how to case the joint. And
right. What I was going to say earlier was Rosa, her crime, I think it makes sense that she was probably in a more secure prison system and then was downgraded to minimum security because it makes sense that she's been there a long time because her crime was much more intense than, the drug trafficking or the pot dealing or whatever the other girls are in for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and they have mentioned that is kind of the case for a lot of people that look like they've been there forever.
Right.
Into their prison. because most people don't stay in a minimum security prison for more than a few years.
Exactly. Um, so this kid, and at the end of her, like, she's teaching him how to steal stuff, and we see how bad, how, again, to point out incompetence in the workplace, that these nurses aren't so great. And but at the end, we find out that the kid is not going to die of cancer. He is going to live, and her curse was broken, I guess.
Yeah, well, I guess that's good news. I like the kid. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I don't know what his name is.
I don't. Did he ever get a name? Someone is gonna jump on this in the comments like 2 days from now and be like, "How could you not know this kid's name?" Well,
right.
There's 50 people in this show. I don't know everybody's name.
Or it's gonna be revealed in the next episode. So yeah, that was kind of a nice story. I liked Rosa, and I think that kind of put a bow on what she was doing. So we move back to the prison. Oh, something else. Fisher is no longer allowed to take the prisoners to the hospital. I don't know if she's not allowed to or she just didn't this time, but Rosa does make a point that only some of the COs that take her go and check on the van every couple hours.
Yeah, it looks like this guy's much more of a hard ass.
Yes. So back at the prison, we have Red and Caputo hanging out in the garden. Is that right?
Yeah, Caputo's having kind of a rough couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's kind of had to be the bad guy, and the tensions are running high with the staff and the prisoners, and he's trying to find contraband, and it hits him all of a sudden that it's probably in the nursery.
Right, and we have found out that Red is sneaking things in through like some sort of tunneling system.
Yeah, it's a sewer tunnel, I think.
Yeah.
Which is an important point later, but yeah, he figures out that Red might be bringing stuff in, and he completely trashes the nursery. But Red has figured him out because she's very smart, and she has bargained with Gloria to move all of her stuff into the kitchen temporarily.
Mm-hmm. And it ends up being the younger girl, or did the younger girls let? Oh no, never mind. I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, you kind of have like all of these racial factions, and you've got the one led by Gloria, the one led by Red, and the one led by V. And when V sees the other two factions conspiring without involving anybody from her team, that kind of makes her ears perk up.
Yes,
that's never good. So that's gonna be a problem later on.
Yeah. Sorry, I am looking at my notes. Yeah, makes sense. And it's really become like a weird sort of race war within the groups. And so, these three women are heading up their three factions and kind of have their minions underneath them. But the minions, I think, are what's going to put, not to call them minions, but the younger people are what's going to end up throwing wrenches into their plans because they're talking to each other.
Yeah, they're all kind of friendly.
Yep, exactly. So the other thing that we have a lot going on of in this episode is Piper's fight to get furlough.
Yep, and it's successful.
Yeah, and
congratulations, Piper.
Right, and people are mad at her because she it gets everything and is very privileged in everything she does in life, and she gets furlough for her sick grandma when people like Pusey have not gotten furlough for when their mom died and things like that. So people are not happy with Piper.
Yeah, and nobody gets furlough apparently.
Yep.
Yeah, so Piper snaps and gives this ridiculous speech in the middle of the dining hall, and it's such an awkward, cringy moment. I had a hard time watching it.
Yeah, I think, and we have Piper, she tries to give the furlough back, like she's really wrestling with like what it means to be like a privileged person in prison, and she kind of says, just because I'm white doesn't mean I don't deserve this, which people don't take super kindly to. And Crazy Eyes starts a food fight.
Yep, throws pie at her, which is a very nice callback.
Yes. Um, so that was kind of perfect. And I guess no love lost between those two.
Yeah. Um, but Healy ends up giving Piper the come to Jesus talk that she needs
Mm-hmm.
and won't allow her to get back the furlough.
Yep. So she's going, and this is kind of the main thread of the episode. So, but she at the end calls her mom to come get her, and she finds out her grandma has already died. So she doesn't get to say her last goodbyes to her grandma.
Yeah, that's
Which,
terrible timing.
yep.
And it's especially kind of poignant because we saw her. I think this was one of the reasons that Piper sort of started striking up a friendship with Jimmy, because she felt like she couldn't talk to her actual grandmother, and this woman needed her help. And
Yeah, Piper does have kind of a kindred spirit with these older ladies and is always interested in what they have to say. So, kind of sweet.
yeah, and I've noticed that Piper and Red have struck up a dynamic that I really like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like I wouldn't necessarily call it mother-daughter, but it's close. They feel like familial.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have also Caputo's second flip out. He kind of fires Fisher out of nowhere the second that she raises some concerns about the conditions in the prison.
Right. And
And
also he's in love with her.
yeah, that's a little bit of a awkward situation.
Right. So Caputo definitely is into Fisher. I think probably for no other reason than that she's the hottest girl that works in the prison, and that's where he spends the majority of his time. And once she starts developing a relationship with this
Alushek.
Alushek, I like, what's his first name?
I don't know if we've ever heard it.
Okay, I wrote down Eric. I don't.
That
I might
sounds
make.
that sounds right.
Okay, I don't know
Gonna,
if that's true or not. I was like, oh, I think that guy's name is Eric. So I refer to Eric all through my
he
notes.
looks like an Eric.
All right. So she starts a relationship with, I'll call him Lushek, and more or less. And Lushek is very funny. And once Caputo kind of sniffs that out, Fisher is out of there, which is probably for the best for everybody.
Yeah, I think she's way too nice to be working there anyway. And we get another moment where Nikki has like the wisdom,
Yeah.
because Nikki is like Buddha in here.
Right.
She gives her a long list of jobs that would be way better than prison guard that Fisher could probably do. So I think she's going to be just fine.
I think so too. The only unfortunate thing is that Fisher was kind of sniffing out what was going on, and she had access to all these phone calls, and that I guess is kind of going to go by the wayside.
Yeah, I think she might have been a little too smart for her own good.
Yep.
She absolutely identified a little too much with the prisoners.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, she was just nice and didn't want to be mean to them, and it's unfortunate that they let her go because now they have to bring back someone who is definitely not going to be nice to the prisoners, which this is kind of like the most exciting part of the episode. But that we find out that Fig rehired Porn Stash.
Which has to go against every policy ever.
Yep, and that kind of gets closed up real quick that this was not a good idea, but his suspension for allegedly sexually assaulting, for the food situation, right?
No, it was actually sexually assaulting Daya because Caputo walked in on them
right
when they were in the closet. I had to go back and look that up. I was mistaken.
Yeah, I'm very confused. I mix those up because Pornstash has done so many terrible things. It's hard to remember what he actually got in trouble for.
Yeah, and it's difficult to just single one out.
Yeah. So Pornstash is back, but we'll get more into that in the next episode.
And Pornstash returns to the strains of the classic song "Bitchin' Camaro" by the Dead Milkmen, which I highly approve. We need more of that. I do not approve of Pornstash, but if he's going to have that kind of soundtrack, I might be okay with him.
It was kind of an epic re-entrance. I really liked that. And you could kind of tell that Pablo Schreiber has like gotten some credibility now and is coming back as almost what seems like a celebrity resurgence on the show.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and speaking of Nikki, we also get her smoking cigarettes with Lushek out on the picnic tables.
Yeah.
And the two of them are very funny. This is Lushek is very crazy with Fisher and how he brings he's just very funny about her. Like he's not a good boyfriend. He doesn't call her, he doesn't text her, and he brought her coffee, but he put alcohol in his coffee and gave it to her by accident. And very funny. He's a bit of comic relief, so I'm always happy to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Although it's kind of dark that the comic relief comes out of the fact that he's just really, really bad at his job.
Right, not good. And that he didn't realize how they made the cigarette layer out of the battery, and she's like, "Aren't you an electrician?" um, yeah, I liked both of those.
And
Do we have
we
anything else?
also had So-So refusing to shower for no apparent reason. That was kind of
Right.
traumatic.
Yeah, that was very, very weird. Like we assume So-So is just kind of protesting because she's a protester and that's like her thing that she does. She's on a hunger strike, which like her, not really going to work out for her, but the reasoning is solid. And then she doesn't want to shower. And then when they make her, she freaks out, like really, really, really starts to cry, and we get no explanation for why.
Yeah. Is she afraid of water?
Right. I don't know. And I hope we get So-So backstory in the next couple episodes. I don't know if we will because she's so new, but a couple
Also,
weird things.
She's not much newer than some of the other people we've heard from.
That's true.
She's had way
And
more screen time than like Cindy and probably even Rosa up until like the last couple episodes.
right. And I I think she's done a couple of really weird things that need explanation. In her very first episode, and I don't think we talked about this, but she kept talking about like, oh, my old best friend, like something weird, like some, kind of like a
Her friend
Chekhov's gun.
Meadow. Yeah.
Yeah, right, Meadow. And I was like, oh, like now we need to know like what happens between her and Meadow, but we have yet to find out. So, and now we have this thing where she's really upset every time she has to shower. So, definitely need answers with So-So.
Yeah. It's either going to tie all of these things together like probably too neatly, or it's going to end up being completely weird and having nothing to do with anything we've known about her so far.
Right. Hopefully the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so episode 9.
Yeah. Do you want to take our question?
Oh, yeah, we should take our question.
Yeah, I think we only have one, but we'll take it in case Anna J is waiting. All right, I'll read the question, then you can answer this one.
Okay.
Lost is probably my favorite show, and I enjoy the comparisons between it and Orange is the New Black. She might be the only one, Jess, that's enjoying your
Yeah, everybody else is like, why do you hate Lost? And
Yeah.
I don't hate Lost, I just hated the way they wrapped Lost up.
Do you get the feeling that Orange is the New Black is leaning towards a whole we were brought together here for a reason idea, that in the end they become a
happy family that changed each other's lives.
Okay.
Personally, I think that worked perfectly on Lost, but I'd be really disappointed to see that on Orange is the New Black. Yeah, personally, I would be too. And I have to think that the show respects our intelligence a little bit more than that. I don't believe that it's going to be... There's no cosmic significance to being in prison. And I think, if anything, that's the moral of the story, that there isn't anything like that.
I think that's interesting, and I think like they'll have things to learn from one another, but it's not for some greater reason.
Yeah, there's not really a higher purpose.
Right.
We got a question from Mike Bloom. He says, do you believe this is the last we'll see of Fisher?
I kind of do, even though I hope not. I think, if anything, maybe she'll come back and help them figure out what, if they have any, if they can use her intelligence and her ins with the system to bring some justice to what's going on here. That would be nice, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe this actress, Lauren Lapkus, is on a couple of other shows right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't come back.
Yeah. I think if we see her one more time, I would imagine she might go talk to the reporter.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But I don't think she's going to be a force. She's not going to be a major force in the show anymore.
Yep, agreed. All right, so that's all we have for questions for now.
Yeah. If you have more questions, feel free to put them on the YouTube page. You can put them in the chat room. You can tweet them at us with the hashtag PS Recaps.
Yes, all
There are
good.
many ways to get at us. And you can also ask us after the fact. We're pretty responsive.
Right, and we'll probably be done with the whole season in a couple days, so
Yeah,
we'll be ready to talk. I know a lot of people have been holding their questions until we're all done.
yeah. I'll
Um,
I'll be done tomorrow. Just so you know.
all right, cool. All right, so we get episode 9, which is Piper goes home.
Yeah. Now, here is something that I thought of while I was watching this. A lot of the hour-long dramas that you watch these days start out with like previously on to pull you into the elements of whatever story they're going to come back to.
Right.
Like on Game of Thrones, they do it and it gets really heavy-handed. Like, oh yeah, we're going to bring back this guy that was in one season, one episode, and we're going to show you the one interaction they had with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I see why this show doesn't do that because they know everybody's just going to watch all 13 episodes at once.
Right.
But I see some points where it would have been helpful, and this is one of those episodes. Because I had not really remembered that we actually have met Piper's grandmother before, and that their relationship, we got to see what that was like.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yes.
would have liked to go back to that and kind of revisit it before we get to the funeral.
Right. Yeah, we saw Piper's grandma. I believe. Did we see her besides just the first episode of this season?
I think that was the only time.
Okay. Yep. So Piper kind of goes to her grandparents and exposes her, or her grandmother, and exposes her dad's affair. And her grandmother kind of had part of the, this effect on Piper where she doesn't talk to, she doesn't tell the truth, and she's kind of wild and doesn't feel any repercussion for her actions.
Yeah.
And that's has a lot to do with her grandmother.
Yeah, I mean, Piper is the sociopath that she is because of Grandma.
Yep. And so it's very interesting that Piper wants to, she kind of reveres her grandmother when the rest of us kind of see it as a little more problematic.
Yeah. Yeah, so Piper gets to go home for 48 hours.
Yep.
And she gets the very warm welcome of having all of her stuff piled by the front door at Larry's house.
Yes. This was Red's flashback in this episode, right?
Yeah, this was
Okay,
Red's
I was confused if it was Piper or Red. Yep, so Piper goes home, ends up at Larry's apartment, her apartment, and I guess because they broke up, is that the only reason he was gonna get rid of all her stuff?
Yeah, he wanted to kind of make a clean break. And earlier he was bringing it all over to Polly's, but apparently there's a lot of stuff.
Right, and wasn't that months ago?
Yeah, I don't know where we are. We must be around March.
Right.
And she arrived in the fall.
Yep. So and they broke up before she went into the shoe for the first time.
Yeah, so right around Christmas.
Right. So that's why
for a good 3 months at this point.
Yeah. So that's when I'm like, has her stuff been in boxes for all this time? Like, this is very weird. But everything's kind of weird with Larry. And yeah, she kind of does the stuff that you do when you get home and has to go to. Kind of funny that she starts planning with her brother, who's great. He's so funny. And that, they start playing that they're gonna go to this cafe and get lunch and stuff, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we have to go to the funeral." So,
yeah. Well, could you expect any less out of a pair of people that made a guessing game out of Grandma dying?
Right, yeah, they're both a little sociopathic. I don't know it's hard to tell how much Piper actually cares about going home and doing this grandma thing, or how much she just wanted the furlough.
Yeah, I can never tell whether Piper is genuine about anything ever.
Right.
And part of that is the actress kind of plays her kind of flat,
Mm-hmm.
but part of it is just who the character is.
Yep, exactly.
She's not a very good person. She's probably worse than most of the people in the prison.
Yes. So she goes to the funeral, has to deal with like her family being a family, you know. It's like the same kind of stuff that you would get even if you weren't in prison from your family, but just more awkward, I think, you know.
Yeah, more awkward, but I don't think that a surprise wedding at a funeral is something that happens to every family.
No, 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 not that part. I meant her aunts and uncles being like, "Oh, like we were so proud of you, you know, like
We
when you were
were proud of you, yeah.
yeah, we used to be proud of you," and kind of just being passive aggressive and polite with her family members. But then Cal and his wife Neri, or his fiance Neri, come out and say that they, right when the funeral ends, that they are going to have a surprise wedding. And I thought that was great. I thought it was very, very funny. I thought it was like, oh, like Grandma wouldn't have wanted all this food and free church to go to waste. So I thought,
It's like the ultimate freegan wedding.
yeah, yeah. So they definitely piggybacked on that one, but it was very funny to see that happen. Cal is a great character.
Yeah, he's definitely. I love seeing more of Cal, and I think Neri brings out all the weirdness in Cal. So
Right.
they're good for each other in that respect.
Yeah. Cal is a little bit. You can see how he and Piper were raised similarly. It's just that he kind of didn't. He doesn't have. He reads the social cues differently than she does. I don't think he has that kind of sociopathic streak that she does, but he definitely does not know what's going on. So
Yeah.
you can tell they both got a little screwed up.
Yeah, like Piper generally knows what's going on and ignores it.
Yes.
And Cal just has no idea.
Yeah, so they're both in kind of like an arrested teenage state.
Yeah, and I loved his comment in the first season that he used to be the family fuck up and now he feels like the pressure is off of him.
Yeah, and it still is. No one cares that he did this funeral wedding. They're just, you know, disappointed in Piper.
Yeah. So, before Piper left for her furlough, Red asked if she would go to Red's store and check it out and, like, get a pierogi and see how it was going.
Yep.
And this was very sad because Piper finally decides to do it. And
Yep.
she goes out there and it's closed.
I know. I saw this one coming from a mile away that
Yeah.
Red is so concerned that her sons and her husband have not been able to keep up her company. And turns out they haven't, and that it's for sale. I'm guessing they kept it up for a long time and then eventually couldn't handle it anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of not. I'm kind of surprised they managed to keep it going for that long because it really seemed like she was running it. Plus, they had the Russian mafia breathing down their neck the whole time, and were almost allowed to stay in business at the mercy of the mafia. So
Right.
it seems like it probably would have shut down the second she went to prison.
Yeah, it's true. And it did look like it had recently been shut down, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So I'm interested if we get more details about that. But the really interesting part is Piper comes back to prison and Red asks her if she was able to go. And Piper lies to her and said, oh, yes, it was still open and I had, you know, the sandwich and blah, blah, blah. And really to protect Red. And it seemed very sweet, even if not, you know, gonna come bite her in the butt soon enough.
Yeah, that's definitely. That's not surprising either.
Right, right. I know. I didn't feel like Piper did it, though, out of any sort of malice. I think she just didn't want Red to be upset, and
Yeah.
she didn't.
No, I think all has been forgiven between Piper and Red.
Yeah, they seem to be very close now.
Yeah. So the other thing that happens on Piper's furlough is she tries to seduce Larry, and
Yes.
he picks the wrongest moment ever to tell her that he slept with someone else.
Yep. Yeah, in a very Jason Biggs fashion.
Yes. Classic Biggs.
Piper is, you know, they're in a compromising position. They're about to, I guess, like have sex in the bathroom, and he says, "I slept with someone," and Piper isn't even really that mad. And then, which is fine, like she kind of gets it. Like she's mad, but she knows she doesn't really have the right to be mad. And she says, "Is it someone I know?" when Larry had a perfect opportunity to say no, he says yes.
Yeah.
Um, so it Piper is now pretty much fuming and I guess, doesn't really have an interest in working things out with Larry.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that she had any genuine interest in him. I think it was just he was there, and she has not had a lot of touching in prison.
Exactly, and she was drinking and
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah, emotions were running high.
Right. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of Piper's furlough story. She ends up, I thought a very, very cool shot was her at the liquor store, like choosing between a bottle of champagne and a bottle of Colt 45, and
Yeah.
she ends up going with the Colt 45, and it was kind of a nice little commentary on who this girl really is.
Yeah. Well, works every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
All
So,
right. Yeah,
all right,
back at
so
the
we should
ranch.
back the ranch. We should go to Red, I think.
Okay.
Because this is kind of interesting. The whole flashback happens at the prison.
Yes, which is very confusing. I was watching with one of my roommates who has not watched every episode, and she was incredible. Like, we watched the whole thing, and I was like, "Oh, what did you think?" And she was just very, very confused. So it was hard. And I guess it's funny that the flashbacks, they don't put like a sepia tone or anything on it to let you know that
Yeah.
you're in a flashback now. You kind of have to look for the clues, like, oh,
You
Red
don't
has
get like
long hair. Yes, exactly. That would be helpful in some situations. So yeah, you
Yeah.
have to kind of see, like, Red has long hair, and so that's how you know.
Yeah, you can always tell it's a flashback because everybody's got a wig on.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So it's Red and V on their first day of prison, and they are kind of semi-friendly at first, but then Red figures out how to set up a contraband operation.
Yeah, I didn't realize she had figured that out so quickly.
Yeah, well, we kind of saw when she first got to prison, she saw the Neptune produce box, and that was kind of, you saw the light bulb come on.
Mm-hmm.
But then V wants in on that because V always wants in on everything.
Yep.
And then V gets her minions to beat the crap out of Red when she won't give up a portion of the contraband enterprise. And V says that Red's mistake is not having backup. And
Mm-hmm.
this kind of dovetails into the present where Red is realizing she needs to make amends.
Right. Red used to have her girls that worked in the kitchen, and then when everything fell apart in the kitchen, they were no longer happy with her. So she got the old ladies in her corner, but they're not really, the best army to have.
Yeah, so she's got to rally the troops again, and she prepares an apology feast for her old gang.
Yes. Very sweet.
Yep, and you see the Golden Girls going into the kitchen and threatening everybody
Right.
to get the ingredients.
This is what I was confused about earlier. That I was like, didn't the younger girls in the kitchen, they screwed up because Gloria wasn't there, and they gave up all the ingredients Red needed for her dinner.
Yeah, but the Golden Girls are probably scarier than you would think, because
Yeah.
you got to imagine anybody that has been in prison for as long as they have probably did something really bad.
Exactly.
So I would not mess with them. Like,
Right.
don't mess with the old ladies in the prison because they are doing serious time.
Yes. So these girls gave up everything without too much of a fight, and Red kind of prepared this beautiful rustic dinner for all of them in the greenhouse.
Yeah, I was impressed that she did so much with so little.
Right. And all the girls that are there are really grateful and seem happy. The only one that is a little bit suspect is Big Boo during that dinner. And she kind of, I think, quickly figures out what's going on, that Red is tunneling in contraband. Because she, like, kind of, sees the tunnel system. And I think that's good. Big Boo's out for herself, so she's going to use that information to get things she wants.
Yep, and immediately she goes straight to V.
Yep.
And in exchange for a cut of the cigarette business, she gives V the information about how the contraband's getting in. And
Okay.
this is gonna be bad.
I have a question. How is V getting into the prison the tobacco and the other drugs?
Well, she has a vendor connection, I think, with the warehouse, and
Okay.
it is having because you saw that tobacco's coming in like the Comet cans.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why she has Suzanne who works in
Yeah,
maintenance. Okay, that
and
makes
that's why
sense.
she got everybody working there.
Right. Okay. I missed that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but
Um,
now she's got a more direct connection, and she
yeah.
can bring in anything she wants. And obviously, she's going to go back to her old business.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Um,
she starts getting the harder stuff in.
yeah, and at first, like, we kind of get the understanding that she's dealing pot, and then that's because one of the girls goes and asks Pusey for a joint.
Yeah,
Is
and
that right?
yeah, she asked. Well, she asked for something. I don't know what exactly she was angling for, but
Mm-hmm.
Pusey goes to Tasty and says, apparently we're selling stuff other than cigarettes now, and
Yeah.
they have a confrontation, and it's kind of hard to watch.
Right. It's yeah, very heartbreaking. Pusey has a lot of, a pretty solid moral code, and she's not going to be selling drugs in prison, especially because that's what put her in prison in the first place, we learn.
Yeah, like nothing good can come out of selling drugs in prison.
Yes. Um, and something I want to say it was AV Club I read this on that they didn't understand, and I didn't really think about it, but I don't understand either, how stamps function as currency in the prison. That how, like, I'm not sure why stamps have such a high value and you can use them as money.
Well, I think it's because you're legally not allowed to sell stamps for more than their face value.
Oh.
So everything else in the commissary has like a ridiculous markup on it, but
Mm-hmm.
stamps are worth the same on the inside as they are on the outside.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
That
that's got to be what it is. And you hear V say, whenever you can, get the forever stamps because those will go up in value.
Oh, okay. Awesome. That's very interesting. I didn't even think about that. Um, so another drug that happens to fall into the prison is some heroin. And we actually start the episode at some sort of AA, Narcotics Anonymous, like a treatment meeting, and we learn a little bit more about Nikki and how uh, Nikki is, not necessarily over being a heroin addict. I don't know if anyone gets over being a heroin addict, but
Yeah,
she,
I
yeah,
don't think you ever do.
right. And so she's really uh, become puts a target on herself for someone that might be interested in purchasing some heroin.
Yeah, and of course the first hit is always free.
Right, right. And that was, it was heart wrenching to watch that whole episode to know, like, is she has this? Is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? And ultimately she decides not to, which is very
Yeah,
impressive. And
but that's in the next episode.
oh,
We'll get to
sorry,
it.
sorry, sorry. Oh man.
Yeah, no, spoilers, dude.
Spoilers. All right, I'm sorry. All right,
No,
where are we
it's totally
now?
cool. We are
Does she get
on.
the heroin in this episode?
Yeah, no, Tasty slips it to her,
Okay,
but we
so this
don't
is
see it. We don't see what she does with it. She might hold on to it. She might throw it out. We're not
okay.
sure.
Yeah, I wonder what she's gonna do. Um, all right.
I'm gonna
Anyway.
guess that she doesn't do it.
Yeah. Anyway, another thing. So this episode is more. All right, you can pick the next topic since I.
We can go to Healy and Pensatucky, or we can go to Mendez and Bennett and Caputo. Which way you want to go with that?
Let's do Pennsatucky. We haven't
All
talked
right.
about it today.
So we had that moment earlier on where you have Healy, who everybody hates, and Pensatucky, who everyone hates, kind of sitting together and commiserating, and then they
Mm-hmm.
share a very awkward and strangely heartwarming hug. And Healy is now going to anger management therapy,
Right.
and he is basically the worst therapy patient ever. Like, I'm
Yeah.
surprised the therapist did not stab him.
Right. Yes. Anything she asks him, he responds in what you can only assume is like the wrong way. That he calls her a cunt. He's just very terrible, and we see what we kind of always knew about Healy to be true, that he has a lot of issues.
Yeah, he has a dark side, and I guess
Yeah.
that's why you go to therapy. And I guess it's
Yeah.
good that he's recognizing that he has a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pennsatucky's having her own issues here in the prison.
Yes.
Her ex-friends are getting kind of rough with her, and she is having her own anger management issues.
Right. And this is very high school. I wonder how old Pennsatucky and her friends are supposed to be, because they seem a little younger than everyone else in the prison. Like if Piper and those girls are high school, like these girls seem kind of junior high.
Yeah.
And chances are, those people are in like their 30s and these girls are in their 20s or whatever. But they're just kind of fighting. Like Pennsatucky and Leanne used to be best friends, and now Leanne has new best friends.
Yep. And I think more to the point, Pennsatucky is not in charge anymore. She had followers before, and she'd become very accustomed to being this, like, sort of religious figure, and now nobody listens to her.
Right, yeah, she was the queen bee.
Yeah.
And now Leanne has kind of been able to take over that role.
Yeah. And that is, you're right, that's very middle school.
Yeah, yeah.
So Healy starts dropping he starts dropping the same stuff he was receiving in anger management. He's using it on her.
Right. And Pennsatucky seems a little more receptive than Healy to it, but she kind of, she's very funny about it, that he asks her, what do you think I do? And she's like, oh, you process the papers. And he's like, oh, no, I'm a counselor. And it's like, oh. I like Pennsatucky a lot. I used to think she was so evil, and now I think she's just like a fun character who from time to time beats people up. Yeah,
that's a running thing with this show. That even the most evil people have their sympathetic moments, and then even the people that we think are supposed to be the good guys have a dark side.
Yes.
And I thought this was very clear at a lot of different points. Like, Red in the first season was really awful to Piper, and now they're good friends almost.
Yeah.
And Healy started out, you thought he might be like the one sane person that Piper could reach out to, and no, it turns out he's really kind of terrible. Caputo starts out jerking off in his office.
Right.
And now he is very sympathetic.
Yep. And I mean, it's great. I like that they're doing that, and you have so much to learn about everybody.
Yeah, I think everybody on this show is both terrible and sympathetic.
Yes, agreed.
And I was sure that there were people that you couldn't say that about.
Yeah.
And I was prepared, going into this episode, I was prepared to say there is nothing they could do that would make Mendez seem sympathetic.
Right.
And they pulled it off.
Yeah, it's true. So let's jump into Mendez. Do we have anything more to say about him?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So this kind of, we have Bennett who's trying to throw his authority around.
Yeah.
And he just sort of snaps. He finds a cigarette butt and starts screaming at everybody. And the person that talks him down is Mendez.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
When you have Mendez telling you that you're too extreme and you got to be nicer, you really got to evaluate your life choices.
Right, yeah. Bennett seems like he's just totally, nothing he's doing is based in actual logic. It's all based on making himself look a certain way to people. And that's terrifying when you're giving that person so much power.
Yeah, and I think that's something that comes into play anytime you're living a double life. You're so conscious of how you're coming across.
Yeah.
And that can wear on you, and I think it's really starting to break him down. So Bennett's reaction to all of this, he goes in and he tells Caputo that Di is pregnant and Mendez is the father.
Yeah, I thought he was going to tell him the truth, and then he totally backfires. Like, I think, Bennett, this is going to catch up to him at one point or another, and if it doesn't, then it's still, it's terrible either way. So I thought he had finally kind of come around and was like, okay, like, I'm going to tell the truth, and he didn't. But because he did that, and they were able to do a pregnancy DNA test on Daya, they were able to figure out pretty quickly, or they weren't able to do a DNA test. They were able to do a pregnancy test,
Yeah.
and she was definitely pregnant. So that's how they.
Yeah. Who's the
right?
person that they saw? Who's the person they saw having sex with her? I mean, it makes
Exactly.
sense. The plan worked, and except Daya kind of regrets this.
Yeah, and she thinks that she did a bad thing to Mendez, and she ends up in Figueroa's office, having to kind of recount her sexual assault, and this went more or less better than I expected. But they, once she kind of said this was consensual, it was very.
Figueroa's like, why are you ruining this guy's life?
Right, which was horrible. Especially because Figueroa was like, oh, don't worry, like, it's still rape. I just want to know if it was consensual. So anyway, why I said it went better than expected is they still end up firing Mendez.
Yeah, which actually doesn't happen until the end of the next episode.
I watched these.
No, I went there too, because the whole thing is kind of, it's compressed into this arc.
Yeah.
I think the start of realizing everybody is sympathetic and everybody is awful kind of leads into they made Mendez sympathetic.
Yes. All right, so we can pin in that.
We can go ahead and lead off with that. We're done with episode 9.
Okay, all right, cool. We'll lead off with that.
Episode 10, and we'll just kind of pretend this was the smoothest segue ever.
Oh, I did like when Caputo told Bennett that he wanted him to, like, crack down in a Coach Taylor kind of way. And there was another one. I just love these, once in a while they'll throw in a joke that Pennsatucky calls Leanne and the other girl Lilo and Stitch. And
they start arguing about which one is Stitch.
Yeah, that was pretty great. So the references they pull into the show, they're perfect for me. So let's start in on this and close out this Bennett and Mendez story.
Yep. The demise of Pornstache.
Yes. So they are able to, Daya says the relationship was consensual, which makes things a little muddy, but still not muddy enough for them not to take action here. That there was a sexual assault in the prison. They now have a pregnant girl, so they have to deal with it. And that they are going to fire Mendez.
Yeah. And Caputo is really excited about this because he wants to be the one to do it.
Yep, he hates this guy.
Yeah. And so they fire him and they walk him out in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Because, it turns out there's actually no such thing as consensual sex between a guard and an inmate.
Yes.
So rape is rape, and he's going to go away for a while, and he runs out the whole way proclaiming his love for Daya, and she feels really terrible about it.
Right, and that's the one thing she's wanted Bennett to do. She's been very clear that, like, I want you to stand up and say that, we're together, and I want you to put yourself in that vulnerable position. And she's not happy that this guy who, like, she doesn't care about and isn't the real father of the baby is willing to, throw his career away and go to jail for her when the guy that she actually loves is not willing to do that.
Yeah, which is also kind of short-sighted of her, because
right.
I think she doesn't quite grasp exactly how life-ruining this is until she sees it happening to Mendez.
Yeah, that's true, and I'm interested to see where her head kind of is at now, because I don't know if Daya is a long-term thinker, so it may, like, to say the least. So I think she might be this might be kind of her first realization that her life, she has kind of messed this up really badly.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested to see the fallout from that situation.
Yes.
And I'm not particularly sad to see Pornstache gone, because he was awful, but at the same time, that was a sad way to go out.
Right, and he got to be, like, a super compelling character that even though he is kind of a bad guy, I would like to see him for more than 2 episodes or whatever we had.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is down to the actor.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, I'm
I
I'm
hope he comes
happy
back.
that happy that his career is taking off.
Yeah, but for sure, I would love to see him again.
Yeah.
All right, who
Okay,
do we have
so
now?
well, it's another Piper flashback episode because we
Yeah,
haven't had one of those in a while.
right.
And she's the Jack Shepherd of this show, which, she's the boring main character who is our into the world, and we got to put up with flashback from her every now and then. And at least it was kind of juvenile and funny.
Yeah, yeah. We see Piper again. It's a flashback because she has long hair, and also because they're not. They're at Alex's apartment or whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we get some straight up sex scenes with Piper and Alex, and we find out that Alex had been in the time that she was starting to date Piper was also had a girlfriend named Sylvia.
Yep. And that doesn't surprise me about Alex, because Alex she's a different kind of, like, she's not as she has more regard for people's feelings than Piper does, but not much more.
Yep. Yeah, so she's definitely got her sociopathic streak in her too. So she's cheating, and then Piper ultimately decides that she does not care.
Yep, because Piper.
Yep. Yeah, so they meet in a bar, they hook up again, blah, blah, blah. And then in a Billy Madison fashion,
Shit, poop!
yeah. They Sylvia lights a bag of poop on Piper's front steps.
And yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic ruse,
Yeah.
and Piper. I thought she was smarter than that. I can't believe she fell for it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what year this was, but Billy Madison had definitely come out by then. And she, when this happens, Polly is also there, and Polly kind of explains what's going on. Like, you slept with a girl that was a girlfriend, and
that gets you poop on your doorstep.
Exactly. And then we bring this right back to the present, where Piper has put together that the person that Larry slept with that she knows is the only other, like her only mutual friend between her and Larry, which is Polly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I I liked Polly's reaction.
Yeah, it was it was very very weak.
I deserved that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Piper is understandably upset, and probably more upset than I expected her to be. But, she feels betrayed by all the people that were supposed to be there for her.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, she's way more over Larry than she is over Alex.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it was almost more of Polly's betrayal than Larry's betrayal here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and Red, who is kind of Piper's mentor now, says you need to get revenge on her. And Piper calls the people she knows will be pretty much down for this, with her brother and Neri, and they execute the same thing that Sylvia executed on her.
Yep. And I think it was a nice moment. Piper's getting to know her sister-in-law.
Yeah, it was sweet. It was some family bonding. Yeah, it was a pretty complete cycle there, and I think, hopefully this ties up some of the Larry and Polly stuff that we've now been dealing with for 10 episodes.
Yeah, I'd be fine if that's all we get.
Yep, agreed.
I would have been fine 5 episodes ago.
Yes.
So,
cool.
We start out with the guards tossing the cells.
Yes, that they have found out there are cigarettes, and like little do they know that there's much more than cigarettes that's entered. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they find
right, they found the cigarette.
They find cigarettes in Watson's tampon box, and she gets sent to the SHU.
Yeah.
And V doesn't have any repercussions, of course.
Yes, and that became very clear that V had told all these girls, like, oh, if you get caught, it's all on me, it's all on me, it's all on me. And that turned out to obviously have never been true.
Yeah, it is not all on her.
Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing that happens while the cell tossing is happening is that Nikki grabs her little stash. We find out she didn't get rid of it yet, and she
Yep.
hides it. And Gina spots this,
Mm-hmm. And
and
Gina knows what's going on.
yeah, and I think it's very interesting that Gina has she's been really, really quiet this season.
Yeah, she only pops in like kind of when it's necessary. She's someone who I think we should have gotten a flashback from well before some of these other characters.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Although the serious in that group, I think the one that I am dying to hear from is Norma.
mm-hmm.
Ironically, hear from because she
Hear
never
from.
talks. And
Right, right.
of course, Annie Golden is amazing in this role,
Yes.
and everything, like every little expression on her face, just makes me want to see a whole episode of her. And I don't even care if she talks or not.
I think we will. I think she's a fan favorite. So I think if we don't see from her this season, I think we'll see from her next season.
Yeah. So, but we do get to see a little bit more of Gina. And I liked seeing that she's very loyal, and now that she's back on Team Red, she's back on it whole hog.
Yep.
And so she's not going to let Nikki alone until Nikki does the right thing.
Yep.
So she's like 10 feet away from Nikki the whole episode until Nikki finally defeats this, the devil on her shoulder and gives the heroin to Red and has done the right thing.
Right. Very, very sweet. It's nice to see Nikki kind of growing up and making these decisions that are in her best interest. So I hope we see good things for Nikki going forward.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was really good to see her vulnerable and
Yeah.
have a little moment of weakness, because I think the last couple of episodes, she's just existed to dispense wisdom to everybody else, and I want more than that out of her.
Right. And I think that's always something or it's not something you see in every show, that someone who's like, their main role is kind of like a wise, cracking, advice-giving person. Like, you don't always see their points where they are in need.
Yeah. So the guards have found all the contraband,
Yep.
and all of the contraband smells like poo.
Right. So they pieced together how all that contraband got in there.
Yeah, and this is the dumbest thing ever, because they decide that it's got to be because it's coming in people's butts.
Yep.
And so they institute cavity checks, and someone says, I think that's illegal, and they're like, we don't care, we're guards. But the actual reason everything smells like poop is that it's being stored in manure bags.
Yeah.
Horse poop does not smell like people poop.
Yeah, I mean, these people, I guess they didn't go that far. They're not, they trust Red, so they aren't doing that kind of A to C thinking to put that one together.
Yeah, it's not... what a brain trust we've got here. It's not rocket surgery, guys.
Yeah.
It smells sort of like animal manure. Where do they keep the animal manure?
Yep. Yeah, it will take a lot to get those people to all be on the same page, I think.
Yeah, clearly.
Yep.
All right. So in other contraband news,
yes.
Pusey really wants absolutely no part of the drug operation. But V all of a sudden is insistent, because Pusey working in the library makes her ideal to work with the drug operation, and this makes no sense either, because V was so insistent that Tasty leave the library.
Mm-hmm. I think she wants Tasty in more of that kind of like outbound sales is what you would call it. I think in marketing you would call that outbound sales, and Pusey is a little more inbound sales, that people will come to her when they need something and she can manage the storage, and Tasty is out there kind of doing the sales calls and pitching people.
Yeah, and Tasty's more of an extrovert. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
She's got her whole, she's got everybody where she wants them, and she has that sense of where people are best served.
Exactly, yeah. And V has definitely a knack for kind of organizational behavior and managerial skills.
Yeah, so that she's got some acumen there.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Pusey ends up getting tanked on her secret stash of hooch,
Mm-hmm.
and then we see a scene that looks exactly like a scene we saw in the last episode.
Yep.
We see V making the order to have the crap beaten out of Pusey in exactly the same fashion that Red was.
Yes. I wonder, and Pusey is beaten, horribly and is so injured. And I wonder if maybe we see Pusey at some point switch sides and come over to Red. She has this relationship with Nikki. She's been very much victimized by V in her community.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that, and I think it's more complicated because there's also a racial issue in there. Like,
Yeah,
all of the
definitely.
lines are very clearly drawn along the lines of, like, what race are you? But
Right.
if Pusey is not able to fall in with V's crowd, where is she going to go?
Exactly. Yeah, I am interested to see. I think Pusey has become a real fulcrum of the season, and which is great because she's such a good character.
Yeah, I love Pusey.
Hmm.
I I felt really terrible having this thought, but I noticed that Suzanne is kind of V's Hodor.
Yep,
She just sort of sicks her on people, and now she's like the muscle.
I
And
know.
it's having seen Suzanne sort of come out of her shell, and now is kind of reduced to being, the
Yeah, lackey.
yeah,
Yeah,
the lackey. That's hard to watch.
yeah, it is very sad. I think like Suzanne was really on point to make this kind of huge growth spurt, if you will, into like a real human character, and she's been kind of reduced out of that.
Yeah, and I think V just took that potential and kind of channeled it the wrong way.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
so
so also in this episode, we had a couple bit people come back. We had Sophia, who I am both sad and confused why we saw so little of Sophia in this season so far.
yeah, Sophia was absolutely one of my favorites last season, and it's really upsetting that she's barely there.
Right, and she was really the breakout actress, like very, very popular, and has had very little to do this season. But we got a quick storyline with her that her son came and he hadn't been there before, and they were playing cards, and it was just a cute little story. It ended happily.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess maybe there's not a lot. Like, that was Sophia's main conflict, and it seems like she's making some headway.
Yep.
So I,
Yeah, so that kind of got pulled together, and we had. This has become my favorite storyline. We have Christopher show up.
yes.
So compelling. Oh my gosh. To see Christopher, the guy that Morello snuck into his house and, had a restraining order against him, he shows up because he knows that if someone sneaks into your house and messes with your wife's wedding veil and steals her stuffed animals, it's probably your former stalker.
Yeah, it's unlikely that he's grown another stalker in the meantime.
Right. So he shows up and he's going nuts, which we kind of know he is being reasonable, even though he is really off his rocker. Like he's correct that she showed up and went to his house, and but he kind of has an outburst, which makes it seem not that he's in the wrong when he's actually correct.
Yeah. Yeah, and he ends up absolutely losing at her and says, "If you come near me again, I'm going to kill you with my bare hands."
Yeah, yeah. So he seems to be the crazy one here, even though I'm pretty sure this is
Probably perfectly normal.
Yeah, yeah. He is having a pretty human reaction. But this is kind of what Morello needed, that she gets to see him and talk to him face to face, and she has realized that this relationship is not going to happen.
Yep, and she thankfully has people to support her.
Yep, so she has Nikki, and she and Nikki at the very beginning of the series were in a relationship, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And
So
I don't know that I mean, now that Nikki knows everything she knows, and Nikki has had a lot of growth in the meantime, I don't know that that's going to happen again.
Right, but they still, Nikki kind of has this best friend relationship with her that she's taking care of her, and now Nikki sort of knows the truth about her, that what she's in there. I don't know if she knows exactly what she's in there for, but she knows that this girl has a lot more going on than she originally let on.
Yeah, yeah, and it's nice that she's there in some capacity anyway.
Right.
That kind of acceptance has got to mean a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we have Soso is on her hunger strike.
Yeah.
She's, her inner activist is coming out, and she's starting to, she's raising her voice against the conditions at the prison, and everyone's making fun of her.
Right.
Everyone knows exactly how far that's going to go.
Exactly. So they all kind of give her, at first, they respect her a little bit, but they know that what she's doing is ultimately fruitless.
Yeah. Yes. So, unfortunately, I think the person she had to go to on this, the person that was going to be most receptive to it, is Yoga Jones.
Yeah.
We have not seen nearly enough of this season.
I know, she's great.
And especially since you told me that she was the voice of Patty Mayonnaise on Doug.
I know. I think credit to Alex Wilpon, I think, did that. So I definitely am excited for more Yoga Jones if we see any more of her.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how she gives Soso a pep talk, but I don't know if she's actually going to join the movement.
Yes. I don't know for sure, but I think her storyline is about to get exciting in the next couple episodes.
And finally, we go back to Healy in Pennsatucky, and they've started up a little support group called the Safe Space. And of course, everyone else knows exactly what kind of therapist Healy would be, and they stay far away, which is probably the smart thing.
Yeah.
So Healy's support group is basically Healy and Pennsatucky hanging out.
Yeah, it's kind of sweet, and I am excited to see where their relationship goes.
Yeah. I don't know. It's getting a little weird for me. I don't know where else they can take it. But I guess they're finding growth with each other, and that's a good thing, because Healy had some good relationships with people, and now doesn't have that anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he's a couple people that we need to close out their storylines, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah. Okay, so we could take a couple more questions before we sign off, because there was a really great one in the chat room that I definitely want to touch on. And Ashley asks us, what do you think of the Dia Bennett thing as a class issue? It seems that a lot of Dia's insistence that Bennett stands up for her comes from the idea that she sees going to prison as something that people just do, since she has her actual family in prison, whereas Bennett sees the possibility of going to prison as his entire life being over and his career opportunities disappearing.
I am not totally sure. I think that's true, that she has her family is there, like she isn't worried about anything in the outside world, and this was something that was always kind of expected of her. And with him, this is his career, and she doesn't really, I don't know if she completely understands what that means.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, it's certainly, like, the fact that she just shows up in prison one day and is like, hey, Mom, what's up? That definitely seems to lend credence to that theory.
Right. Yeah, I think I hadn't really thought of it as a class issue, but I guess that's true. I kind of was thinking of it as just kind of two different value systems, but I guess that's not totally different.
Yeah, I mean, that's, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think class plays into it, and I think also, like, there's a little moral relativism there, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's all we had for questions. Last call for anybody that's hanging out in the chat room. But I wanted to let you guys know we're going to wrap things up. We're going to watch the rest of the episodes over the weekend, and then we're going to come back to you next week with one last Orange is the New Black episode. So
Yep.
go ahead, if you've been saving up your questions up until this point and you want to get a whole season overview from us, just reach out to us on Twitter during the weekend, and we will collect all of your questions and we can talk about them when we have watched everything. And I know that the next 3 episodes, people keep saying that these are really incredible, and we are in for a treat.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to talk about everything in the season as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know where to find us. You can leave comments on the page. Please, if you're enjoying everything, it's not too late to subscribe to us on iTunes, and that really helps us out if you leave a rating, like review us, say some nice things about us. That'll help raise our profile and bring in more interaction. Leave us some comments on YouTube. Leave us some comments on postshowrecaps.com. We always love hearing from you. And, of course, you can tweet at us. My Twitter handle is HaymakerHattie.
And
And
mine is Taylor Cotter. I know we glossed over some storylines in this episode, so if you want to talk about, or not this episode, in all the episodes, because we only have limited time, but if there's anything more you want to discuss with us, hit us up on Twitter, and we're happy to talk about it.
yeah, I mean, my Twitter door is always open, and I'm a much better listening ear than Sam Healy.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And
Great.
whether you're tuning in live or you're tuning in far into the future, we appreciate everything from all of you. And we will hear from you next week. So I guess that's about it. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.